And Amaresh are on the JSD team or Jira Service Desk team. Um, some fun facts. What were some of the fun facts that we talked about? Uh, Matt used to play rugby and was called the Viking. Was that correct? Right? Makes sense. And and Amaresh can eat. He can drink coffee any time of day, night. I think he loves it more than life itself. And so, so those are some fun facts. So without any further ado, I'm going to let these guys get on and welcome them to the stage.
Hey everyone. So, over the past few days, we've really spoken a lot about Atlassian's approach to modern IT. Jira Service Desk plays a huge role in that. My name's Amresh, and today, along with Matt, I'm really excited to talk to you about how you can unlock new opportunities with Jira Service Desk. We're going to split up this talk today into 4 sections. I'll start with a quick introduction to JSD. And JSD, as the name implies, is built on top of Jira. That means you can use all the goodness of the Jira platform and as app developers, but what I'll do is highlight some unique opportunities and unique features for Jira Service Desk. I'm then going to zip through a huge number of opportunities there are for building apps on top of Jira Service Desk. And I'll show you some examples of apps that we like and ones that are doing really cool things and solving key customer needs. Matt's then going to deep dive into our new assets platform that we're really excited to unveil and take you through the platform with an example app and show you some code samples to get you really excited and inspired to build your own apps. So JSD was born out of a true customer need. A few years ago, we were researching what customers were using Jira for, and we found that outside of software development, a huge chunk of customers, 40%, were using Jira to run their service desks. There's nothing really wrong with that. Jira is a super flexible product, as you all know. You've got custom fields, you've got workflows, you've got permissions, notifications. You can pretty much model any business process with it. But as we dug deeper, we noticed that aside from just tracking customer needs, there were 2 key challenges that service teams were facing. First up, they needed a way to connect with their customers, many of whom were non-technical users. And they themselves had to deal with a huge volume of tickets. They needed ways to effectively prioritize and work through the tickets that were coming in. These were the 2 fundamental problems we aimed to solve with Jira Service Desk. And over the years, we've built a number of features to address these. I'm going to show you a quick timeline of the key events that have led up to today in Jira Service Desk's history. So we launched version 1 of JSD back in October 2013 as a standalone product. We soon realized that Jira's pay-per-user pricing model was not really suitable for JSD, and a year later, we introduced agent-based pricing, and that's when we really saw Jira Service Desk adoption take off. In 2016, we introduced Connect and made our REST APIs publicly available, enabling developers to build apps that extend JSD's capabilities. And last year, we crossed the milestone of over 500 apps available on the marketplace compatible with JSD. So there are 5 key areas of Jira Service Desk functionality that I want to focus on today. Each of these represent key areas that your app can leverage and extend. Starting with the portal. The portal provides a dedicated site for help seekers to get help from. It provides 2 key functions. It provides an easy-to-use interface to allow customers to create and track their requests. And it provides an integrated knowledge base backed by rich articles from Confluence, so customers can save time by helping themselves. The Help Center is the prime real estate for your customers to come and get help from the portal. And here's an example of an app that surfaces status page notifications on the Help Center to give help seekers more visibility on the status of a service. Additionally, you can surface extra details in a modal dialog like this one. Here it's telling me about an API that's currently unavailable because it's timing out. This helps to keep end users informed and reduce the number of duplicate tickets a service desk team has to deal with. Help seekers raise requests on the portal through forms like this one. This allows support teams to capture rich context on cases and specify critical data needed by the team. This really helps to streamline the support process. These forms are customizable, and apps can collect custom input on the request forms using panels. So for example, your app could add a panel to the left to let the help seekers have the ability to receive notifications on their tickets through additional channels, such as SMS, Facebook Messenger, or Slack. Once a request gets created, help seekers can then use the request view to track and update their requests. We've opened up the ability for apps to provide their own request actions and panels here. So here's an example where you can have a progress bar on specific request types to help raise awareness of the process. This helps manage expectations and timing and to deflect potential questions again. There are a bunch of other cool things you can do with this. You could add a call button to let a customer call support, for instance. Next, we'll look at queues. So agents work on issues from a shared queue like this one here. This allows admins to split up their work into queues, letting agents focus on areas of specialization. So these queues are really flexible. You can define the criteria for which issues display here, the ordering, and even the columns that get displayed. Now, as apps, you can create your own custom queues here, and these are really cool. So you could do things like build a custom queue showing live phone calls or live chats where an agent can answer a call or join an existing chat from within the queue, directly from the queues. Now let's look at the issue view. The issue view is where the majority of an agent's work happens. Here's a sneak peek of the new issue view that we're developing for Jira Service Desk. Apps can plug into this screen using web panels from the Jira platform. This is how Service Desk displays its own SLA panel. Issue panels are an awesome way to provide contextual information about a ticket. Here's an example of an app that allows agents to make and log phone calls to customers directly from within the issue view. Agents can open the glance panel to reveal all the call logs. And they can now make new calls and take notes on those calls directly from within their ticket. Here's another example that displays information about a customer's laptop from an asset management system and provides context to an agent to help resolve the issue faster. Next up, we'll look at reports. Reporting is a core aspect of Jira Service Desk. Now, this is a custom report that our very own IT admin at Atlassian have created, showing a breakdown of tickets based on geographical office. Now, reports like this can be easily created using JQL. However, for more sophisticated reports, we've opened up the reporting UI to developers to build entirely new reports. Here's an example report that proactively identifies and shows you problematic assets, for instance. In this case, we can see that one printer is showing far more service requests than the other ones, indicating that there might be a problem. You can extend this even further by showing all the tickets linked to this individual printer when you click on it. Lastly, we have automation. We've built an automation engine to help teams streamline their workflow by automating manual and repetitive tasks. So the way this works is you first pick the event that triggers the automation rule in the when condition. You can then add one or more conditions in the if box to define which issues are acted on. And then you set the action in the then box that will occur when the condition, if condition is met. So the opportunity in automation for developers is to create custom then actions. So in this example, the then action is to create an incident in VictorOps. What you can do is also provide additional options to further configure the option the action if needed, and this is through an iframe. So that was a really brief introduction to some of the key JSD functionality, but now I want to convince you that your next app should be built for Jira Service Desk. But before I dive in, just a quick show of hands. How many of you are using Jira Service Desk today? Okay, wow, so that's almost the entire room. You're one of over thousands of customers across the globe using Jira Service Desk. It is the fastest growing product at Atlassian. But there's another great milestone I want to share with you today. As of today, there have been over 150 million calls to our REST API, just in 2018 alone. Think about that for a second. That's huge. And a good chunk of these calls are going to help our customers run their service desks. Help them do things that make it easier for them to do their job, to be more productive, to have happier customers and employees. So now let's look at some specific opportunities to build high-value apps and integrations for Jira Service Desk. In the interest of time, I'll be zooming through a handful of opportunities that we've identified. So asset tracking is in high demand, and we've heard that time and time again from our customers. Often, in order to resolve tickets, agents need more context. So they need, if a laptop's having issues, they need to know how old it is, what OS it's running, what version it is, when it was last updated, and so on and so forth. In addition, they sometimes want to look up a list of issues that have been tied to that laptop, a history of incidents that may have happened. Then we have reporting. Reporting and dashboarding is another area where our customers are looking to get deeper insights, especially at an exec level. Managers want to get a better understanding of agent workloads and how well the team is handling customer tickets today. Are they getting better over time? How are they dealing with SLAs? How are they dealing with customer satisfaction ratings? Then we have remote access. More and more teams are becoming distributed, and sometimes instead of going back and forth over email, hopping onto a video call or letting an agent initiate a remote desktop session from a ticket lets them resolve issues more quickly. But it's not just all about IT. We have other opportunities to make agents more productive and automate manual tasks. We want to leverage smarts and AI to help agents focus on the right things. Some ideas here include things like routing a ticket to the right customer based on the context, streamlining approvals, deflecting and resolving tickets automatically based on analyzing ticket history. But we've also seen an influx of business teams, such as facilities, HR, legal, using Service Desk. You can empower these teams by building all sorts of use case specific add-ons. You could do things like parsing resumes and job listings online, automating purchase requests, managing contracts, onboarding employees, having electronic signatures, and so on and so forth. The list is endless. So now I want to get your imagination going, and I want to show you a few examples of apps that vendors have built for Jira Service Desk. So this is Refined Sites. Refined Sites provide tools to build a fully tailored and branded customer-facing site for Jira Service Desk. It lets customers configure the branding, the URL, and lets you incorporate additional knowledge sources. Then we have the Forma app from ThinkTilt. Forma allows teams to create forms to collect the information that they need without having to spend the time assembling complex custom field configurations. You can have external forms like this one available on the portal and on the issue view. So for instance, here's a form to get approval for attending a conference. And as you can see, this is all embedded on the portal. But you can also have internal forms like this one that are only accessible on the issue view by agents. This is Hugo. Hugo builds team collaboration software for meetings. by making meeting notes shareable across the organization, Hugo connects the whole company to valuable insights and action from meetings. Ooh. Just gonna zoom through. Zoom through. Sorry about that. Yeah. Sorry about that. So this was Hugo, and Hugo, along with JSD, enables teams to turn problems, requests, and tasks that come up in meetings linked to Jira Service Desk issues in real time. So here's an example where we can turn this request of a customer needing Atlassian hoodies into a task to an inline action. And here's what that looks like in the request view, in the agent view in Jira Service Desk. So lastly, before I hand over to Matt, I want to quickly touch upon some of the ways we can help more Jira Service Desk customers learn about your apps and integrations. So we have a staff picks section in our marketplace where we're constantly looking to showcase the apps that are solving some of the key problems our customers have, especially in the areas I outlined before. In addition to that, we have two other channels. We have a blog where we're constantly looking to add and showcase cool examples, showcase customer stories using Jira Service Desk apps and integrations. And we're also looking to kickstart initiatives to recommend apps to our customers in product, having the right context. So you've heard me talk about the how, and the what and the why, but I'm now going to let Matt talk about the why. I briefly touched upon the new platform we've built for developers to build asset tracking apps, and Matt will now go into a lot more detail into what that means for you.
Thanks. Thanks, Amaresh. We're going to switch this talk around a little bit now. We're going to change pace a little bit. So I just want everyone to take a bit of a deep breath because we're up here, we're talking about high-level concepts, abstract. We're going to start zooming down now, zooming right down to some code. And I promise you by the end of the slides, you'll be experts in writing with this new assets API and using the example app that I'm about to show you. So we're ready? We're ready to go deep? Ready to go down? All right. But we'll go down carefully. We're going to start with a simple question, but one with a very, very complicated answer. What is an asset? And when we talk about an asset, we talk about something that adds value or has value in your organization or adds context to a ticket inside your organization. So it could be a computer, it could be a component within a computer, it could be a collection of components, something more complicated like a bus in that example, or it could even just be a virtual service in your organization. And we think about assets adding context to a ticket, and that's what the asset platform does. So to use the asset platform, we've defined 3 different core integration patterns. The first one is an integration pattern called integrate, and that is when you have an asset repository outside of Jira and you're bringing that information into Jira to create context on your tickets. I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. And the second integration pattern is called vertical, where you supply a complete asset tracking system inside Jira without the need of an external repository. The third one is a horizontal. That's when you provide augmentation or some kind of extended experience on top of assets created by another type of add-on. So I'm going to go through each one of these in a bit more detail. First one. As I said, Jira exists as the interface between your users and their tickets. The platform in this kind of add-on will create a relationship between the asset that's assigned to an issue and the asset that exists inside an external third-party repository. That's why we call it integration. It's a service that sits in between that will be watching assets that get created in these repositories, either through some kind of automated system, maybe an agent running on your laptop collecting your keystrokes, or maybe something more interesting like the amount of memory that your laptop has, and pushing that into Jira Service Desk or into Jira to store it there. The next one, vertical. This is your asset sitting on top of the asset platform, sitting on top of Jira, using the Jira extension points and the UI extension points to create a complete example. We'll use this pattern when we talk about the actual code later on. And the third one is an app that sits on top of those other two types of integration that adds some functionality. Imagine like an app that creates some kind of currency conversion. You don't necessarily want to implement that across all apps, but it could be really cool to have an app reading a currency value from an asset and providing it in multiple different currencies, or calculating depreciation, or generating barcodes that only apply to certain asset types. It sits on top of the assets created by other apps. It doesn't create assets itself, it just uses ones that are already there. So that's the integration pattern. We're going to go another level deeper now. We're going to start talking about the API. I want to make sure you guys are ready. I'm going to talk about APIs here. So there's three main sections of the APIs. There's the asset API, which we create, update, delete, retrieve assets. There's the typing API, which is similar, has create, retrieve, update, and delete on the typing information. And then the search API. A simple way to search through all of your assets to find assets based on issue key or on information that's stored in the asset. So this is an asset. This is JSON blob that represents an asset. I'm going to go through each part of it separately. This is the origin. This defines like an identity of the asset. This defines where it's come from. The origin is your app key. So if you're running a Connect add-on, you can set your Connect Descriptor app key in there and then use an origin ID. The origin ID is your app's understanding of what an identity is for an asset. It could be like a serial number or some kind of hash, or maybe a service name if you're using virtual services. Most assets are going to be assigned to a user, like a laptop is being used by a user. And we'll see how this is useful later. We have a relationship between an asset and its type. So in this particular case, this asset is a computer. And it also has an app key there to define where that type has been defined. This label is when we render an asset inside Jira or Jira Service Desk, we need to know how to describe it. And when your app creates the asset, it can put whatever text it wants in here. It might be like a conglomeration of a couple of fields, maybe like Apple, MacBook, and then the amount of memory, maybe the year or something like that. And that's what we will use to describe the asset when we're presenting it to the user. But at its heart, an asset is a fairly dynamic type structure, which allows you to store any information that you want against this asset. It has a list of fields with a field ID and a value. And in this particular example, I've described this computer to be purple. I'm not sure why. Purple computer would be a bit crazy. But you could have anything in there. You could store anything. You could store the amount of memory, whatever is relevant from you. And that information in some of the integration patterns would come from the third-party service. And you would synchronize a subset of that, whatever makes sense to be displayed in Jira, or whatever is publicly available and hiding the more sensitive information. So the asset API, REST API, sits on top of your Jira REST API using that URL structure. Yep. If we zoom into that, we can see that on the asset URI path, we can post those JSON blobs to create an asset. We can put them to create or update them, and we can get a list of all the assets in that tenant. It's paginated. You can loop through it and get like page sizes and things like that. You can also interact with them directly through that API's, that URL structure with the app key and the origin ID on the URL, and you can get a particular asset to get all the information about it, or you can delete an asset using that. All right, so we'll talk about assets. Now we'll talk a little bit about types. They follow a similar pattern. We have the same identity structure with the origin, the app key, and the origin ID. In this particular case, my app is defining a type called computer. And again, we just have a label here describing the type. This one, in this case, it's just a computer. We're adding more information to this as we go. We're adding things like icons, more information that can help tie types together and get better searching and relationships between them. Okay, so this is the URL structure for it. You can put on asset/type. You can put those JSON representations into that URL to create or update an asset type. And again, you can also interact with it directly through its app key and origin on the URL. All right, so we've talked about the API. Where does that information get displayed to the user? There are three main UI components where a user will interact or see an asset. One of them is on the asset panel. It's a contextual information panel on the side of the issue view page. The next one is an asset field, which is where you interact and set the asset. And the third one is in portal support. I'm going to go through each one now individually. This awesome animation here that I put together is a user expanding open a asset panel on the context sidebar. And if we have a look at that closely, there are several sort of key elements to that. The top line is the IT hardware then. This is the asset field, the custom field inside Jira that's storing the asset relationship. This is set by the Jira admin. The next thing, the asset label sort of shows that box, what asset is being displayed, and that's the asset label from the JSON object that I showed you before. And down the bottom is an idea about adding contextual actions inside this bar to add assets directly in the context panel. This block inside the panel is an iframe that your app would get to render. So you could display anything in there. In this particular case, I've gone through each of the fields and I've rendered them in a way that kind of makes sense for each particular field. But it's up to you as an app vendor to interpret them. There's like a hidden field here. There's like, imagine like if there was a URL stored on this asset. In this particular app, they've rendered a link to it. So you can imagine like storing an asset in an asset repository service that has all sorts of information about it. But maybe it's only restricted to a certain number of people. So they go to the ticket, click on that link, view more details, goes over to the asset repository, log into that, see more information about the asset. So you can see how they're tied together here and how the app is responsible for rendering that and getting some really contextual, cool information. All right. This sequence will show how a user will interact with the asset field. You can see the asset field there in the field section of the Jira View Issue page. It's a standard field. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. They can search for their assets. At this particular time, this user is searching for all assets, but the administrator can actually go into the settings of this field and restrict it to things like particular types. Imagine you have a single field for your services, single field for your computers, depending on how you want to set up your issue tracking. And of course, you can set multiple assets on a single issue, so you can track as many assets that are relevant for your particular issue. The third one is the Jira, the Service Desk portal. It makes sense. We've got asset tracking. We want our users to create a ticket, link it to the issue, or link it to the hardware that they're having an issue with. So if you've got a problem with their laptop, you want to know what laptop it is. So that field will show up automatically on the portal. And in this case, it's showing all of the laptops that this user has been assigned to. Because you don't want to see everyone's laptop there. That would be crazy. But in this particular case, it's showing just the ones that are assigned to you. We're looking at ways to improve that automatic filtering, maybe allowing searching by type as well. But in this case, it's just searching by the user assignee. All right, so we're halfway down. We've got a little bit further to go. We're going to get down to some real code in a minute. Everyone's okay with that? That's good? Okay, cool. I've written an example app that I'm going to run through. It's called Atlassian Popcorn. It's got the URL there, so you can go to that repository now. It's public. You can download it. You can clone it. You can start your app with this if you want to. It's a Node.js app. Sorry about that. It's Node.js. It's React. And it has a really good sort of end-to-end implementation of assets. It is a vertical app. It doesn't require a third-party asset repository. It has a complete solution, although a very simple one, a complete solution inside Jira Service Desk. End-to-end, it uses other Jira Service Desk and Jira UI extension points to provide lists of assets and dialogues and so forth, and we'll go through those in a minute. And it uses the asset platform to store all of its assets. So now I'm going to go through this in detail, but I just wanted to show of hands, who's written a Connect add-on before? For any product, okay, yeah, not heaps, but that's okay. The Connect, that's better. The Connect add-on starts with a descriptor. The descriptor is a manifest. It's a JSON object that describes what things you are extending inside of your product. In this case, Jira. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. This is a really complicated topic, but I'm going to highlight a few areas that I think are relevant. The first one is the authentication. When I define an authentication setting in my Connect add-on, I'm telling Jira that I'm going to make calls back into the product either on behalf of another user or as already pre-authenticated user. And that allows me to make calls that are defined within a particular scope. In this particular case, my add-on can read and it can delete content. I don't really need delete content in this example, but I just wanted it there for completion. But the real heart of this descriptor is the modules. The modules describe what in Jira I'm going to be modifying. We have 3 modules, and I'm going to run through each one of them in detail. The first module is a Jira project page module. The second one is the asset panel on the sidebar. And the third one is a dialog that allows the user interaction on these assets. And I'm going to go through exactly how you configure each one of them. Firstly, this is the Popcorn asset list page. It is a Jira project page. It has a menu bar on the sidebar. It shows up in the project context. That entire content window is for yours to render. It's an iframe. And everything that's come back inside that is being rendered by my app, my example app. In this case, we're just listing off all of the assets that this tenant knows about. And it has a menu so you can interact with it. So how do you define this? It's actually quite easy. Here is the Atlassian Connect descriptor in the modules section describing the Jira project pages. There's only a few elements to here that are relevant. The URL. This is the URL that Jira will call when it wants to render that iframe. So it needs to know what to put in that iframe. So it makes a call to the popcorn / popcorn URL. And whatever I return back, it's going to put in that iframe. We also have an icon to describe the popcorn link in the navigation. We have the name, so that's what text gets shown in there. And we have a key just to make it unique. So the basic flow of this page is when the page loads and the URL gets called, the iframe starts to get populated. The logic inside that server will make a REST call back to Jira, collect all of the assets using the search or the pagination API. And it will open a dialog if someone clicks open or edit on that menu that I showed you. I'll show you a more detailed example of the dialog when we get to the dialog section. But suffice to say, basically, when you click edit, it's going to open the dialog and you're going to be able to edit the asset. And then you can use the REST API to also delete or update your edits from that page when requested. So that's the main page. The second one is the asset panel. This is what I showed you before. We want to render information about the asset in the context of the issue view. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to define an asset panel, which is going to have a URL. But in this case, we've got some context information on that URL. And that's going to tell our panel what asset to render. Again, we have a name. In this case, we'll call it popcorn. And we have a key just to make it unique in our module descriptor. So the basic logic is acquire the asset context from the URL. We're going to get the app key and the origin ID. We're going to make a call back into Jira to load the asset. So we're going to use ap.requests. You'd see this if you've written a connect add-on. And that's going to use the JWT authenticated connection back to Jira to load up all of the asset, or load this particular asset, to allow you to do something with it, in this case, render it. But you could also do something else. Now you've got the asset origin ID and serial number. You could make a call somewhere else to get more information. Maybe look it up in a separate asset repository to get a combination of information from multiple sources. It's really quite cool that you can do that. So finally, we've got the dialog. It's kind of the glue that holds everything together. This dialog, in this particular case, allows us to edit and create assets. The highlighted area is an iframe, which you get to render. And this is how you create one. It's really the same pattern, right? We're seeing a pattern here. Firstly, we have a URL. When that dialog gets called /dialog, the HTTP request comes along, and we return back a HTML form. We have some options around the dialogues. In this case, we're just setting the heading, but you can do other things like turn the Chrome off and things like that. In this case, we have a key, but this time it's actually quite useful. Because when we're on our list of pages, we want to be able to open that dialog when we want to edit it, for example. We do that using this kind of code. This code uses the dialog component, which is included into our code like this. We have a function here that refers to it. Now we have this dialog.create method that we can call. And you can see that we're using the key that we use to define the dialog. We're passing in a custom header, because in this case we want to edit. We're also passing in custom data. This custom data is critical because it tells the dialog what mode to run in. In this case, we're running in the edit mode. We have an asset, so we update all the fields and we set all the values and stuff like that. And it also means that when we close the dialog, we know that we need to update it instead of creating it. So the basic flow of a dialog is to acquire the asset context from the passed-in custom data. So we look at the mode and we look if there's an asset object there to determine if we're editing or creating. Then we use AtlasKit to render that form. So all of those form elements that you saw in that screenshot are from AtlasKit, and you can see that in the example code. Then we use the REST API to save or create the asset when the user submits the form or ignore it when they hit cancel. All right, so let me recap on our talk. Amaresh has talked to you about an introduction to JSD, giving some really high-level concepts around Jira Service Desk, give you a great history of it. He talked about why now is a great reason to work on Jira Service Desk and Jira add-ons. And I went through the asset platform, gave you an introduction to it, and hopefully didn't go down too quickly into the details. With the example app here, I showed you really basically how that kind of fits all together to come up with a solution. And I'm going to put the URL back up again, so you can have a look at that there for the example app, and also for the URL to go.atlassian.com to sign up for the assets platform beta release. Thank you.
We have a few minutes for questions. Any questions?
First, congratulations for this and Jira Ops. I think these two are a very great improvement in ITSM. First question is quick. The data center and server, when?
That's all.
So for data center and server, the assets platform, like I guess you already have apps today. On server, you can do a lot more to inject those assets into server. We built this specifically for cloud to solve a big pain point for our developers there, but we're open to understanding what exact needs you have and how we can help you better with that. So come and have a chat with us after.
And second, does it have any kind of integration with Insight?
Insight are working on building an integration for cloud with us, yes.
Thank you.
There's a question down the front.
So we actually just asked one of them, but I had one question. In the asset panel module, you had the context, asset context in the URL.
Yep.
Is there where can you find a documentation for what context you can require?
Yep. So the asset context that you're referring to on the URL, that was the asset.appkey, asset.origin.id. Yeah. So this is available if you sign up for that link that I put up at the end there. Yeah, this one here. So if you go to atlassian.com/assets, you can sign up for the beta release. So it's not publicly available yet, but if you sign up, you can get all that information. Yeah. I think there's people moving at the back. It's a bit hard to see with the lights. Very bright.
I was wondering if you could give us some insight into what's the strategy, whether Jira Service Desk is going to be blown into a larger ITSM platform or not. What is the strategy behind this product?
Well, I think the strategy for Atlassian is to go deeper and invest more in IT, and Jira Service Desk is a really key part of that. We see a lot of our teams using the Service Desk is super flexible. I mean, you can see people using it for supporting customers externally outside of their organization, but we also have a lot of IT teams using it to manage and track incidents and requests from their customers. So we want to have a product that's super flexible, but I think we are going to be investing in and doubling down and looking at needs of our IT customers more.
Maybe just one further comment. Are you supporting ITIL as part of your strategy with this product?
Jira Service Desk is ITIL certified. So yes, we are already ITIL certified, and out of the box, like the templates that we provide for the ITSM project types will have the ITIL relevant concepts to ITIL already supported out of the box.
Okay, question about the search and asset field types or property types. Can you elaborate a little bit about what search capabilities does this platform support and what types of fields does it support?
Okay, yep, I can do that. So the type of fields that you're talking about, I think you're talking about the fields inside the asset, correct? Yeah. So we have no typing on those. Hello. Oh yeah. We have no typing on those fields at this point, so it's basically just a key value pair. So whatever you store in that JSON value, you can store whatever you like. We don't interpret any of that anywhere, so the only code that is rendering or understanding that field is in the app. So if you want to encode something, store it in there, you can do that. And what was the other, sorry, what was the second part of the question? Search, that's right. Okay, so currently when you search, you're searching on all field values. So if you type in, if you have like Apple MacBook as a field to say what brand it is, and you search for MacBook, then it will find it. It's a fairly basic searching, and it's really there to facilitate the UI component to find the assets in both the portal and in the field. So there's searching in that regard. There's searching in the other aspect of it, from things like finding issues that have links to an asset. It's the other kind of searching that we support. And that is, I believe that the assets are still fully JQL integrated, so you can find assets through JQL searches.
One more thing to add to that is that when you're specifying asset types, we now have field configuration. So for that custom field, the Jira admin can actually go and specify saying, hey, for this field, this is a laptop field, for instance, only show me assets of the type laptop. So it would only filter out the types that you specify, and you can have multiple types supported there.
Awesome. Well, that's our time.
Cool.
You guys can ask questions maybe in the hallway if you got more, if you have some specialized questions. But please fill out the survey and let us know how we did. And thank you for joining us. And another round of applause for these great guys.